Okay, I sent a message to myself to remember to upload the video sooner rather than later. Basically, to answer Hisham's question as well, the chapters from the book, basically, that we're covering are 4 through 9. So, nothing on... and if we look in the lecture slides, basically, we're not going to cover corporate governance, corporate responsibility, or management analysis. So we're starting with business level strategy, competitive rivalry, corporate level strategy, international strategy. That's what's on the exam. And in reference to some of your questions before or some of your suggestions in the continuous improvement feedback about how the chapters match up with the lecture slides. Business level strategy matches up 1-to-1 with chapter 4 in the book. Competitive rivalry matches up 1-to-1 with chapter 5 in the book. Corporate level strategy actually matches up with chapters 6, 7, and 9 in the book. So I cover topics from each of those chapters in one lecture slide on corporate level strategy. And then international strategy covers chapters 8 and part of chapter 9 in the book. So cooperative strategy, I don't go over that as a separate topic in the lectures. Part of it is a topic about how to enter international markets. Part of it is a topic about how to diversify. But I don't cover it as a separate topic in the lectures. Yes, Jose?
So just to clarify, the lecture slides 4 through 7 and the chapters 4 through 9?
Yes.
All right, cool.
That is correct. So that's kind of how the chapters match to the lecture slides. And then just FYI, lecture slide 1 corresponds to chapter 1 in the book, 2 corresponds to 2 in the book, 3 corresponds to 3 in the book from back on the first exam. And then our third exam that we'll have later on covers slides 8, 9, and 10, which basically cover chapters 10 and 11 in the book. So there's some stuff in my lecture slides that's not in the book. So there's only 2 chapters from the book that are covered on the third exams, and then the rest of it is from my lecture slides. So, questions about any of that? Okay, so reviewing the lecture slides for important concepts for the exam. So, the key things to remember from this chapter, customer vignettes and market sizing, those will not be on the exam, actually. However, these are 2 topics that I've gone over that'll be on the final that are important from this chapter. As far as the exam next week is concerned, the thing that you need to know is generic competitive strategy. So I talked in my lecture slides about low cost and differentiation, and I didn't talk a lot about focused versus broad in those categories, and I didn't talk about best cost. That's covered in more detail in your book. It's also covered a little bit in the slides here. I just didn't focus on it in my lecture. You're going to need to know that for the exam. So the exam next week, low cost versus differentiation, focused versus broad strategies, and best cost. Check out those sections of the textbook and take a look at those sections of my slides. That'll be on the exam. Just to give you a couple of heads up or tips of things I may not have gone over, but I know are important on the exam. Focused cost tries to focus on controlling costs for a narrow market. Okay? That's a concept that's important for you guys to know. Focus differentiation. So we talked about low cost and differentiation, period, in this class. So basically, you can either compete on having the lowest cost structure possible, or you can compete on having a superior product in some way. What we didn't talk about is whether you are targeting a focused market or a broad market, and whether you try to combine the strategies. That's what focus versus broad has to do with, and that's what best cost is when you try and combine a differentiation strategy. Or basically, best cost is trying to combine low prices or low costs with differentiated features on your products in some way. Hey, Nish. That's okay.
Helping out with the University Garden.
Good. What were you doing, man?
The charrette that Jenny was working on. Me and her were just I was helping out with the surveys.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is she still summarizing the surveys?
I believe so.
Yeah, there's a lot to summarize.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so back to the topic at hand. Concepts to remember. Focus cost is controlling costs for a focused market. Focus differentiation is having a differentiated product choice in a narrow or a niche market. Okay? Those are two things I didn't talk about very much in the lectures, but that's going to be on the exam. And then as far as best cost is concerned, the danger of doing that, not very many firms try to do it, the danger of it is that you get stuck in the middle, which means that true low-cost competitors will steal your customers on price, and true differentiation competitors will steal your customers because they have a superior product. And you'll get stuck in the middle, as it were, not being able to satisfy anybody. So there are companies that do it successfully. It's very difficult to do. So not very many. That is one of the big reasons why I just focus on low cost versus differentiation in this class. But the exam has a little bit more finer nuances on it. So that all comes from slides, lecture slide number 4, or lecture slide deck number 4. And that comes from chapter 4 as well in the textbook. So that's what we're covering from chapter 4 and lecture slides 4. Any questions about that? Okay. Am I still recording? Oh, good. I am. Hello. Good. Okay, so Chapter 5, competitive rivalry. We're not covering a whole lot in these slides or from the book. We're covering a lot more from chapters 6, 7, 8, and 9. But let me cover a few things from these slides in this chapter that are going to be part of this exam. So this concept of market commonality versus resource similarity, important to remember. And factors affecting the likelihood of an attack. The other thing that was in these slides, which is important for the final but not for the exam, is market positioning maps. Those are the three main concepts from chapter 5 and lecture slide deck number 5. Any questions about that? Okay. So.
A quick question, Professor. Did you say factors for attack? The second term.
Factors influencing the likelihood of attack, but it's the whole thing I talked about with attack posture versus defense posture. It's in the slide deck. Okay, so chapters 6, 7, 8, and 9 are covered in a combination of my lecture slides that are numbered 6 and 7. So from lecture slide deck 6, There's going to be a lot in the exam about forward versus backward integration. Okay, or vertical and horizontal, forward and backward integration. There's a lot of stuff in the exam on diversification. So this slide here, number 10, 11, 12, 13, to a certain extent, the concepts in the BCG matrix, just the idea of growing markets versus stagnant markets. But there's going to be a lot of questions in the exam on mergers and acquisitions and diversification. So I will get to more of that in some of the other slides, but from this deck, most important thing is these slides 10 through 13 here, especially the concept of vertical integration versus horizontal integration, and questions about why should a firm diversify. So a few tips for you, or concepts that are going to be key for the exam. Why diversify? So you want to diversify to spread business risk. You want to diversify when your market that you're in is not growing very fast, or you don't have a very good piece of that market. Diversification is bad when it spreads your resources too thin. So some key concepts to remember there. And from the BCG, yes, Stephanie. Why it's bad? When you stretch your resources too thin. The stuff from the BCG matrix here that's going to be important. Do you have a strong or a weak position, or strong or weak amount of market share in the industry that you're in? And is it a growing versus stagnating versus declining market? Those are key concepts to think about from there. So in general, you want to be in a growing market and you want to have a large market share. You don't want to be in a stagnating or declining market, and you definitely don't want to have a small market share. These are the key concepts to keep in mind for the exam. There's two different concepts, related and unrelated diversification. Related diversification leverages common resources, and unrelated diversification does not leverage common resources. This is a key point about related versus non-related diversification. Those are the major concepts to be familiar with from lecture slide deck 6. Yes, Stephanie. Say again?
Can you repeat it?
Yeah, sure. Related diversification is when your company is in one industry and you have a certain set of resources. Let's say the media business. So the same talent, the same resources that it takes to advertise movies, it also takes to advertise music or advertise TV shows. So if you diversify from film into TV and music, then that's related diversification because it's leveraging the same common resources. Unrelated diversification would be a movie company purchasing a washing machine company. Like it doesn't have anything to do with the common resources, and there you're trying to make the same common resources work, but they don't have anything in common with the two businesses, so you're stretching them too thin, and that's when it's bad. Got it?
Yeah.
Other questions about slide deck 6? Okay.
How again, like scenarios?
Yes, actually, I can tell you right now, this exam has less questions, but they're worth more. So it's the same format, multiple choice at the beginning. I think the first 18 or 19 questions are just simple multiple choice. And then there's the scenarios that you read and answer questions. And I think there's 4 or 5 scenarios. And there's just 29 total questions. So instead of 50, you got 29 to answer. But each individual question is worth more. So the multiple choice will be worth 3, and the scenario questions will be worth 4 each. Other questions? Yes, Christian.
So on this, excuse me. So on the scenario questions, it's still multiple choice like it was on the last one. It's just that there's going to be like 4 questions per scenario.
Yep.
Oh.
Actually, there's more like 2 or 3 questions per scenario, but yes. There's less questions per scenario than there were in the first exam, but it's the same thing. You read the scenario and then answer multiple choice questions.
Oh.
Other questions before I go on to Deck 7? Okay. So, lecture slide Deck 7. Which will open sometime soon. Okay, so from Deck 7 here, most important thing to remember, a couple of the most important things to remember, this chart of international entry modes. They basically go from easiest to most difficult in the lower left-hand corner to the upper right-hand corner. There's going to be some questions in the exam about what's the easiest way to get into a new international market. Exporting, licensing, franchising are a lot easier than strategic alliances, joint ventures, and wholly owned subsidiaries. I didn't talk about this very much in the lectures, but there will be a question on the exam about the difference between a strategic alliance and a joint venture. A strategic alliance is when 2 companies agree to share the resources that they already have and cooperate together. A joint venture is when 2 companies invest money in creating a new company which is jointly owned between the 2 of them. So joint venture means new investment between 2 companies. Strategic alliance means cooperation without new investment. Okay? I didn't cover that very clearly in the slides because to me it's not that big of a distinction, but there is a question on the exam about that. So that's the difference between those 2. Sort of related to the last deck of slides as well. I didn't talk about this very much in the slides, but again, it's something to keep in mind for the exam. Vertical integration tends to lock a firm deeper into an industry. Okay? There's a question on the exam about some of the implications of vertical integration, and one of those implications is that you get locked in more tightly to the industry that you're in if you integrate vertically. So the slides here on the details about licensing, franchising, mergers and acquisitions, be familiar with the differences between these different types of entry modes. There will not be anything in the exam about this cage distance framework, so that'll be important for the final, but not for the exam next week. And it's only 128, but that's actually everything that's in the exam. I've covered what you need to know. So I can answer more questions, but otherwise I'm going to let you guys out early. Do you have specific questions about the exam or things you're concerned about? It will not cover chapters 10 and 11, and it will not cover lecture slide decks 8, 9, and 10. That is not on the exam. Lecture slides decks 4, 5, 6, 7, chapters 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? There you go. Enjoy your extra time.